When the sludge swallowed my house in Brumadinho, I thought I had reached the peak of human pain. I believed nothing could ever hurt more than losing every memory, every inch of a life built over decades. I was wrong. The true devastation didn't come from the mud. It came from my own blood. My son, my only child, looked me in the eyes and said, "Dad, our home isn't a hotel for refugees." And just like that, something inside me shattered. That fracture in my chest would become the seed of the most controversial, shocking, and unforgettable decision I've ever made. When I received 2.8 million Rs in compensation from Vail, I didn't buy another house. I didn't seek comfort. I did something no one in my family saw coming, something they all called madness, until they realized it was a lesson, a final lesson. I'm not telling this story for revenge. I'm telling it as a warning for those who believe blood alone guarantees love, loyalty, or even a roof over your head. Think again. Stay with me until the end. The truth I'm about to reveal will shake you, like it shook me. And if this hits home, tell me your story in the comments. Just write, "Tell us your story, Anthony." Let's begin. My name is Anthony Falcão. I'm a 68-year-old retired mining technician. I worked 35 years for Vail, one of Brazil's largest companies. I thought I knew my family. I didn't. And when I finally saw who they really were, I unleashed a vengeance so ruthless, they still carry the scars. But before I tell you what I did, you need to understand how it all began. I lived in Brumadinho for 40 years, in a modest 3-bedroom home on Acacia Street near the city center. It was nothing luxurious, but it was mine. I bought it in 1979, shortly after marrying Helena, the love of my life. We had almost no furniture back then, just dreams. She dreamed of a garden. I dreamed of a workshop. She planted rose bushes out front, a mango tree in the backyard, and rows of herbs, mint, basil, rosemary, along the side of the house. She always said, "A home without fresh seasoning isn't a real home." Every evening after work, we'd water the plants together. It was our ritual, our time. Helena died in March 2016, pancreatic cancer. We discovered it in January. She was gone by March, 2 months. That's all it took to destroy 42 years of love. She was 64. I was 65. We had dreamed of growing old together, traveling after retirement, watching our grandkids grow. Dreams that turned to dust the moment she took her last breath. After that, the house became too big, too quiet. Her room stayed untouched. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her perfume still sat on the dresser. Her slippers still beside the bed. I knew it was foolish, but I couldn't let go. Most nights I slept on the living room couch. The bed without her was too cold. And the garden became my obsession. It was my link to her. I watered and trimmed the plants religiously, whispering to them like she was still listening. The neighbors thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. My son, Lucas, was a civil engineer, graduated from UFMG, always a smart kid, straight A student. He worked for a major construction firm in Belo Horizonte and Ganharia. Married to Priscilla for 15 years. She worked in logistics. They had 2 kids, Matthias, 12, and Sophia, 9. I saw the grandkids on holidays, birthdays, maybe a few days during school breaks. Nothing too close, but normal. Matthias liked soccer. Sophia loved drawing. I taught the boy how to play dominoes, took them fishing in the creek behind the house when they visited. Lucas had always been ambitious. As a kid, he'd say, "Dad, I'll make it big. I'll have a big house, a fancy car, give my kids the best education." I admired that fire, and he made good on it. He bought a luxury apartment in Belvedere, one of the fanciest neighborhoods in BH. 200 square meters, 3-car garage, imported Honda Civic, kids in the most expensive private school in the area. I was proud at first. "Look, Dad, I got the apartment." "Dad, I upgraded the car." The kids got into the top school, and I'd think I raised a successful man. He got where I never could. But what I didn't realize was that the higher he climbed, the further away he drifted. The visits grew scarce. The calls became rare. When Helena died, he came to the funeral, hugged me, said, "Call me if you need anything." But I knew it was just politeness. Over the next 3 years, he visited 4 times. 4. Once a year, maybe. Always in a rush, always glued to his phone, talking work. I let it slide. I told myself he was building his future, that it was normal. I had my garden, my retirement, my memories. I thought it was enough. I didn't know I was being set up for the biggest heartbreak of my life. January 25th, 2019. A sunny Friday. The day the earth opened. The day my life ended and began again. That morning, everything felt ordinary. I got up early, as always, brewed my black coffee, ate a slice of sweet bread, and sat on the porch flipping through the Estado de Minas. Politics, economy, the usual. The sun was shining. The sky was spotless. There was no warning. At 10:30 a.m., I went out to the yard. My daily routine. Water. Helena's garden. I started with the rose bushes, then moved to the herbs along the side. Mint, basil, rosemary. I was just reaching the mango tree in the back when I heard it, a deep, guttural roar. It sounded like thunder, but there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. It was loud, unsettling. I froze, garden hose still in hand. The sound was coming from the direction of the mine. At first I thought, must be blasting. We were used to hearing the occasional rumble from Vale's operations, but this one was different. Then I saw it, a brown shadow on the horizon, fast, furious, rushing down the hills like an avalanche of death. I squinted, confused. Was it dirt? Number. It was moving too quickly, too wildly. Mud. Thick, merciless, unforgiving mud, barreling straight at me. My instincts kicked in. I dropped the hose, ran into the house. I tried to grab something, documents, photos, anything. But when I looked out the living room window, I realized it was too late. The wave was already tearing through the street above mine. I only had seconds. I grabbed my car keys and wallet from the kitchen table, bolted into the garage, and fired up my old 2010 Goal. By some miracle, the gas tank was full. I slammed on the accelerator, speeding away. In the rearview mirror, I saw my world vanish. First, the front gate, then the garden, then the porch where I drank coffee every morning with Helena's scent still in the air. The mud swallowed it all, like a ravenous beast. In less than 5 minutes, 40 years of life became a wet grave of brown sludge. I parked on higher ground, shaking, Dozens of others gathered nearby, shocked, silent, watching the same nightmare unfold. The sludge continued its deadly march, devouring homes, cars, trees, everything. It was like watching the end of the world. A man beside me sobbed. I asked if he was from my street. He nodded and whispered, "There is no street anymore." He was right. Where there had once been community, memory, laughter, now there was only destruction. Emergency teams arrived fast. Red Cross, civil defense, firefighters. They set up a temporary shelter in the town gym. That's where everyone went. There was nowhere else to go. The gym was overflowing. Entire families stunned. Children crying. Old people like me in shock. Thin mattresses on the floor. Donated blankets. Portable toilets in the courtyard. Cold Marmitex meals from volunteers in nearby cities. People meant well, but the place felt like purgatory. I stayed there for 3 days. 3 days lying on a thin mat in a sea of strangers. 3 days of cold showers, borrowed clothes, tasteless food. 3 days hearing whispers, sobs, cell phones dialing desperately for missing relatives. On the 3rd day, reality slammed me in the face. 19 people from my street were gone, dead, buried alive. Dona Conceição, 3 houses down. Seu Manuel and his whole family. Pedrinho, the sweet 8-year-old who always waved to me on his bike. I had lost my home, my memories, my life, but at least I was alive. Many weren't. That Sunday morning, while sipping watered-down coffee, I knew what I had to do. I needed to call Lucas, tell him I was alive, ask for help. That call changed everything, but not the way I imagined. I borrowed a phone from the social worker. My own was somewhere under 10 tons of mud. I knew Lucas liked to sleep in on weekends, but I couldn't wait any longer. It was 9:30 a.m., January 27th. The phone rang 4 times. Then he answered. "Hey, Dad? Wow, I've been watching the news. What a tragedy." His tone, cold, detached, like he was commenting on a news article, not talking to his father, who just escaped death. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't ask where I was, didn't ask if I needed help. "Lucas," I said, "my house is gone. Everything. I'm staying in the municipal gym, a shelter. Can I come stay with you for a few days, just until I find somewhere else?" Silence. A silence so long it felt like a blade slowly piercing my chest. He finally exhaled. "Dad, it's complicated. Priscilla's stressed with work. There's an audit coming up. The kids have school, tests. Our routine's really hectic right now." I heard whispers in the background. Then, louder than life, I heard her. "Priscilla, tell him our house isn't a hotel for refugees. We've got enough problems without babysitting old people." The words tore through me like shrapnel. Refugee. She called me a refugee. Not her husband's father. Not her children's grandfather. A refugee. A burden. "Dad, you understand, right?" Lucas continued, as if I hadn't heard. "It'd only be for a few days, but maybe it's best you look for something more permanent, more appropriate to your situation." "Permanent," I repeated, stunned. Lucas, I lost everything. 40 years under mud. I just need a place to sleep, a warm meal, until I can stand up again. You won't be homeless, he replied flatly. You have your retirement, and you'll get compensation from Vail. Everyone knows they'll pay. You've always been independent. You'll figure it out. The coldness in his voice hit me harder than any tragedy. Independent, like I chose to be alone after Helena died. Like I hadn't called him dozens of times over the years, only to hear, "I'm busy, Dad," again and again. Lucas, I said, voice trembling, I raised you alone after your mom got sick. I worked double shifts to pay for your college. I sold my car to help with your first apartment. And now, when I need you most... That was a long time ago, he interrupted. I'm grateful, really. But now I have my own family to take care of. Responsibilities. You'll understand once you calm down. In the background, I heard Priscilla again. Tell him we'll help with money so he can rent a room, but he's not staying here. I mean, we can help with something, maybe enough to get a room somewhere, Lucas added weakly. But staying here, at our place, isn't really an option. At that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it died. He wasn't my son anymore. He was a stranger. No, worse. A stranger doesn't pretend to love you. All right, Lucas. Thanks anyway. Don't be like that, Dad. It's just temporary. Soon you'll... I hung up. I didn't want to hear another lie, another fake promise, another lifeline made of sand. And what they didn't know was that I had recorded the entire call. After I ended the call, I just stood there, surrounded by chaos, crying children, exhausted volunteers, and yet I'd never felt more alone in my life. Not because of the tragedy, but because the only family I had left had turned their backs on me. 3 days after the mud buried my home, I moved into a temporary shelter arranged by the city, an old house hastily repurposed on 7 de Setembro Street, in the heart of Brumadinho. It was falling apart, peeling walls, flickering lights, the faint stench of mold trying to be masked by cheap disinfectant. I shared a small room with 3 other men. There was Mr. Jose, 72, who lost his wife in the disaster, Ms. Maria, 78, a diabetic who'd lost all her meds, and Pedro, 65, an ex-Vail worker, like me, 4 steel bunk beds, 1 shared closet, and a single dusty window that opened to the backyard where donated clothes hung like flags of defeat. We shared 1 bathroom with 10 people. Food, rice, beans, fried egg, and sausage every single day. Morning coffee tasted like brown-tinted water. Lunch at 11:30. Dinner by 5:30. That was our rhythm, our life. At 68 years old, after a lifetime of labor, paying taxes, and building my house brick by brick, I now lived like a beggar, relying on charity, wearing second-hand clothes, standing in line for showers. The humiliation was daily and relentless. At night, I'd hear Jose sobbing quietly for his wife, Maria moaning in pain from her swollen foot, Pedro whispering numbers in the dark, counting what he'd lost. Everyone had their way of mourning. Mine? I'd stare at the ceiling, haunted by a single phrase. Our house isn't a hotel for refugees. The voice of Priscilla echoed like a curse. 3 weeks after the call, Lucas finally showed up. Tuesday afternoon, I was in the patio talking to Pedro about the legal proceedings when the receptionist called out, "Mr. Anthony, you've got a visitor." He walked in like a stranger, awkward, glancing around nervously, like he was afraid to catch something. In his hand, a supermarket plastic bag with used clothes, shirts I recognized as his, faded and stretched, and a packet of cream crackers. "How are you, Dad?" he asked, standing a meter away, like I was contagious. "Surviving," I replied, without hiding the sarcasm. He scanned the room, the flaking paint, the stained concrete floor, the heavy air. He wrinkled his nose, tried to hide it, failed miserably. "This is just temporary, right? Soon you'll get back on your feet." "Back on my feet? With what money?" I asked flatly. "Oh, come on, Dad. You always manage. You've always been resourceful." We talked for 10 minutes. Empty words, small talk. The kids are good. Priscilla sends her love. Lies. Work's been hectic. Elevator talk. Then came the real reason. "So, has anything come through about the compensation yet?" he asked, trying to sound casual. But I caught the shift in his tone. There it was, the truth. He wasn't there for me. He wasn't there out of guilt or love. He came sniffing for numbers. "Nothing yet," I lied, locking eyes with him. "The lawyers say it might take years. I may not live to see it." I saw it. A flicker of disappointment flashed across his face, fast, but I noticed. "Well, you know, it'll work out. These big companies always end up paying," he said, forcing a smile. The truth? I had already hired a lawyer 3 days after the disaster, Dr. Henrique Carvalho, specialist in environmental law and damages, a bulldog in a suit. He'd told me the case was solid. Photos of the house, deeds, medical reports showing psychological trauma. Everything was airtight. He estimated somewhere between 2 million and 3 million reais. But I wasn't going to tell Lucas, not yet. After 15 more minutes of fake affection, he hugged me briefly and left, back to his comfortable condo in Belvedere, back to his family, while I remained there, sharing a room with strangers, drowning in silence. That night, I made a decision. If Lucas wanted to treat our relationship like a transaction, so be it. I would play that game too, but I would play it better. And in business, information is power. He didn't know I was watching him too. A week later, the first clue came from Dona Marlene, a 74-year-old lady who'd lost her apartment and had the eyes of a hawk. "Mr. Anthony," she said, "that young man who visited you last week, he's your son, right?" "Yes, why?" "Well, after he left, I saw him talking to Carla, the social worker. They chatted for a good 20 minutes. I was nearby, heard everything." What was he asking? Strange questions about what happens to the belongings of elderly people living in shelters when they die. Who takes the body if they have no home, no assets? My chest went cold. "You're sure, Dona Marlene?" "Absolutely." I pretended to read a magazine nearby. He even used the word indigent, asked about procedures when an elderly indigent dies. Indigent. My own son was calling me that, to a stranger. And worse, he was preparing for my death. Not grieving, not helping, planning. But the second discovery would be even worse. 2 weeks later, I was in Dr. Henrique's office going over documents when his secretary buzzed in. "Doctor, there's a Mr. Lucas Falcone here to see you." Dr. Henrique looked puzzled. "Lucas Falcone? Is he family?" "He's my son," I said, jaw clenched. "Odd. He booked an appointment yesterday, said he had questions about succession law." I knew instantly. "Doctor, can you meet him? But don't tell him I'm here. I want to hear what he says." Dr. Henrique hesitated, but agreed. He led me to the adjoining room and left the door slightly ajar. Lucas entered, as smooth as ever, confident, polite, polished. "Doctor, thank you for seeing me. I just have a few doubts about inheritance laws." "Of course. How can I help?" "My father's a victim of the Brumadinho disaster. He lost everything. He's now in a public shelter. I know he'll be compensated. But I'd like to understand, if he passes away before receiving the payment, does it automatically go into the estate?" Dr. Enrique paused. "Is he ill?" "Oh, no. He's just deeply depressed. Says troubling things sometimes. I want to be prepared, you know." "Lieutenant, all of it. I never said anything like that. He was painting me as suicidal to justify preparing for my death." "If the money hasn't been paid yet, it depends on the agreement," the doctor replied. "But yes, if he dies, as his only son, you'd inherit." "And if he makes a will leaving everything to someone else?" "You'd still be entitled to 50%, your legal share, but he can distribute the other half as he wishes." Lucas sighed, frustrated. "And if there's no will, then you get everything." "Perfect. Thank you, doctor." When he left, Dr. Enrique returned to find me shaking with rage. "He wanted to know exactly how much he could collect if you died," the lawyer confirmed. That was the moment it hit me with crystal clarity. My son was not waiting for me to get back on my feet. He was waiting for me to be buried. And if he wanted war, then war he would get. From that moment on, the mission was clear. This wasn't a family anymore. It was a battlefield, and my son had unknowingly declared war. In September 2019, 8 months after the tragedy, my compensation finally came through. 2.8 million reais. When Dr. Henrique told me the amount, I couldn't speak. It was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. 800,000 reais for the home and material losses, 600,000 reais for moral damages, and a staggering 1.4 million reais for psychological trauma and loss of quality of life. Vale wants to avoid long lawsuits, Dr. Henrique said. They're paying generously to close cases fast. It was blood money, a cruel joke from the universe. The worst tragedy of my life had made me a millionaire. The funds were deposited into a secure account set up by Dr. Henrique. I didn't tell a soul, not the full amount, not even a fraction. At the shelter, I told people I'd gotten a small settlement. I wanted to test something. I wanted to see who would show up and why. And just like I predicted, Lucas started visiting. more often, once every week, always with an excuse. I was just nearby. Brought you a little something. Suddenly, he was the caring son, the prodigal caregiver. Dad, how about we find you a nice house, something more comfortable, you know, worthy of your age. The same man who told me to find a more appropriate situation now wanted to play interior designer. Dad, you've worked your whole life. You deserve to enjoy it. Maybe travel, explore a bit. After all, after 70, life should be savored. Where was all this concern when I was sleeping next to rats? Anything you need, Dad. Anything. Just say the word. I'm here for you. Those were the words I used when I called him from the shelter, when I begged, when I was desperate. The exact words he dismissed. The transformation in Priscilla was even more dramatic. The woman who once called me a refugee now sent gifts, dress shirts, imported cologne, even a brand new Samsung Galaxy phone. It's for you to stay connected with the family, Lucas said. Connected? To the family that disconnected me the moment I needed them? But the most telling shift came from the grandchildren. Matthias and Sophia started calling me weekly. Sweet little chats about school, about visiting soon, about missing me. It almost felt real until Sophia, in her childlike innocence, dropped the truth. Grandpa, Mommy said you got rich after the mud thing. Is it true? I felt my stomach twist. And why did she say that, dear? She said now you can buy cool stuff for us, that you're not poor anymore. And she told us to call you a lot, so you know we love you. Children don't lie. They don't fake affection. That was Priscilla, using them as pawns. A few days later, Matthias, now 12, was even more direct. Grandpa, Dad said you can buy a new house now. Can it have a pool? We could come stay there on school break. Stay over. When I had my house, they barely visited twice a year. When I was in the shelter, they never showed. Now suddenly, I was a holiday destination. The masks were slipping, and I needed to see what was under them. I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do. Marcelo, ex-civil police, recommended by Dr. Henrique, cost me 3,500 reais, worth every cent. I want everything, I told him. Debts, assets, the truth. He's suddenly too interested. I want to know why. 2 weeks later, the truth hit harder than any mudslide. Lucas was drowning in debt. 340,000 reais spread across 5 maxed-out credit cards, lavish restaurant bills, fancy department store splurges, Instagram vacations he couldn't afford. His company, Horizonte Engenharia, was bleeding. Contracts canceled. Salaries 3 months behind. Lucas was on the layoff list. Their Belvedere condo, 2 mortgage payments overdue, $8,500 a month, money they didn't have. The bank had sent notice of foreclosure. He had personal loans from Banco do Brasil. The Honda Civic was still under financing. His checking account had been overdrawn for half a year. And the cherry on top, he had co-signed an 180,000 reais loan for a friend named Carlos Henrique, who had vanished. Priscilla had no idea. She kept spending, paying private school tuition, living like they were rich, living a lie. Lucas was bankrupt, desperate, and hoping I'd die to solve everything in one swoop. But I had a surprise, one that would make him regret ever calling me independent. First, I rewrote my will. I returned to Dr. Henrique and said, "Erase everything. Lucas gets nothing." "Mr. Falcone," he said gently, "are you sure? Emotional decisions." "I'm not emotional. I'm lucid. He only cares about my death. So I'll give my life's work to those who care about the living." I split my estate into 3 equal parts. 1/3 to the Renova Foundation to help victims of environmental tragedies. 933,000 reais for families destroyed by corporate greed. 1/3 to a fund I created in Helena's name, the Helena Fund. It would offer shelter and psychological care to abandoned elderly people. I didn't want others to suffer the humiliation I did. The last third to the people who actually helped me. Dona Marlene, 200,000 reais for opening my eyes. João, the app driver who took me to medical appointments free of charge, 200,000 reais. Dr. Anna, the psychologist who treated me for free at the shelter, 200,000 reais. The remaining 333,000 reais I split among anonymous volunteers and quiet angels who showed real kindness. 0 for Lucas, 0 for Priscilla, 0 for those who called me a refugee and plotted my death. "I want this airtight, legally untouchable," I told Enrique. "He still gets his legal share, 50%, he warned. Let him choke on it. It's more than he deserves." And just like that, I signed my freedom. But that was just the start. I had one more card to play, one that would ruin not just Lucas, but his entire illusion of success. After the will was rewritten, after I sealed Lucas's fate with a single signature, I still wasn't satisfied. Because while he thought I was just an old man lost in grief, I was uncovering his darkest secrets. And I wasn't done. I asked Marcelo to dig deeper, not just into Lucas's finances, but his professional life. What he found was worse than I imagined. Lucas had been the lead engineer on 3 major construction projects for Horizonte Engenharia. Each had serious structural problems. The first, a 15-story residential tower in Savassi. Cracks in the foundation appeared just 8 months after residents moved in. The second, a bridge over a stream in the metro area. Water infiltration, exposed rusted rebar, weak concrete. The third, a shopping center in Contagem. Part of the ceiling collapsed due to severe leakage and structural rot. And Lucas had signed off on every inspection, every safety report, his stamp, his CREA certification. I worked 35 years in mining and construction. I knew what I was seeing. Basic errors that no competent engineer would miss. Miscalculated concrete mixtures. Incorrect rebar placement. Foundations unfit for the soil. Errors that could kill people. Was it incompetence? Corruption? Company pressure? It didn't matter. He was liable. So I built a bomb. I gathered everything, certified reports, photographs, internal memos, eyewitness statements, 60 pages of undeniable proof. And I prepared my final strike. Exactly 1 year after the mudslide, on a January Friday, I launched my war. 3 actions, 1 day, all at once. First, I bought a full-page ad in Estado de Minas. Cost me 15,000 reais. Big headline. 1 year later, what Brumadinho taught me about family. I told it all. The betrayal, the shelter, the rejection. I published parts of the phone call. I had recorded everything. His visit to the lawyer to ask about my death. His attempt to label me an indigent. His full name. Photo. CPF. Company. Address. I didn't censor anything. Second, I mailed the full 60-page dossier to CREAMG, the Engineering Council. I included CDs with photos, technical reports, and a formal request for ethics investigation and license suspension. Third, I launched a website, unworthysons.com Brazil. Paid a programmer 2,000 reais to build it. Clean design, dark theme. It featured stories of elderly parents abandoned by their families. And Lucas and Priscilla. They were the first case. Photos of their wedding, their Belvedere condo. Screenshots of them flaunting luxury online. Beside them, photos of me at the shelter. Cold, alone, forgotten. The contrast was devastating. By Saturday, the site had 50,000 visits. Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. It went viral. By Sunday, local radio was talking about it. The engineer who left his father in a shelter after Brumadinho. Monday morning, January 27th, exactly 1 year later, 7 a.m., my phone rang. Lucas, desperate, panicked. Dad, what did you do? I'm being fired. Crea's opening a case. The kids are being bullied. Priscilla is in shock. Please, what are you doing to us? I answered calmly, almost too calmly. Oh? Now you call? Dad, you've lost your mind. You're ruining our lives. I ruined them? Who called me a refugee, Lucas? Who researched how to claim my money before I was dead? Silence. You have 5 minutes to explain why you went to a lawyer behind my back. Why you asked about indigent death protocols. Click. He hung up. Coward. Just like always. Brave behind whispers. Spineless in truth. And the dominoes kept falling. Lucas was fired that same day. Horizonte Engenharia couldn't keep a disgraced engineer under investigation. CREA suspended his license for 2 years. No engineering, no income. Priscilla? She lost her job by Wednesday. The HR department didn't want her name tied to the scandal. They were forced to sell their Belvedere apartment. Fast, cheap. 1.2 million reais. Just enough to clear urgent debts. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental in Venda Nova. From 8,500 reais mortgage to 1,200 reais rent. The kids, pulled from their elite school, moved to a public one, bullied relentlessly. The internet never forgets. Lucas found work selling construction materials. Salary, 1,500 reais, plus commission, from engineer to counter clerk. But I wasn't done. 6 months later, I received a call I didn't expect. Grandpa, Matthias's voice trembled. He was 13 now. Yes, son? I read everything. Dad said you were crazy, but I heard the recording. I saw the site. I heard Mom say it, about you being a refugee. He was crying. We didn't know, Grandpa. If we had known, we would have asked you to live with us. I swear. I know, Matthias. Can you forgive us, me and Sophia? We love you, even if you weren't rich. That's when my heart softened. The children were innocent. I rewrote my will. Again, I created a trust fund for their college. They'll get it when they turn 25, but only if they stay in touch with me. No contact, no money. Lucas and Priscilla still get nothing. Today I live comfortably in Nova Lima. My grandkids visit every weekend. Donna Marlene, she's my partner now. Juan, my private driver. The Helena Fund has helped over 200 elderly victims of abandonment. And Lucas still works 12-hour shifts selling cement. Sometimes he calls. He says he's sorry, that he's changed, that he regrets it all. I listen, but I don't forgive. Not yet. Because when you abandon your father at his lowest, you lose the right to ask for mercy at yours. Brumadinho took my home, but it revealed who really loved me. Now I ask you, the one reading or listening, if you were me, would you have done the same? Leave your answer in the comments. Was this revenge too much or just enough? And if this story shook you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more. Until next time.